I almost lost my voice, so I will not speak so much, but I can assure you these two guys, they have a lot of stuff to say. We've just been talking the whole film away outside, and we'll try to replay the most interesting parts of our conversation and maybe discover others along with you, because I'm sure you also might have questions. But let's start out thanking you for a wonderful film. I had the pleasure of meeting these two guys when they came to Copenhagen, and they were sitting in our company for a while editing. And maybe you should start telling a bit about the way you met and how you kind of you opened up that discussion a bit, that you felt that you had some communication. I mean, we all know that finding each other as director and editor is a crucial thing. So maybe you can start out a bit there about the cooperation.
Yeah, well, for me, it was in the selection committee of Doc Incubator.
That's a workshop.
Yes, a workshop where the projects of film, several, 6, 8, go for 3 weeks over 8 months or something like that. So there's the producer, director, and editor. And there are some, I don't know, maybe you should explain what Doc Incubator is.
Well, I think Doc Incubator, their logo, or the thing beyond their logo or below their logo, is if you have worked in Doc Incubator, they want to put that on the credit list, and it says, "We cracked the nut." So that's how they see themselves. In a way, that's the whole intention of the workshop, is to attract difficult documentaries, or documentaries that have already been shooting and have started the editing process, but find themselves away locked or stuck in the editing. So the idea is that you apply with with a rough cut, or with an assembly, as it was in my case. And it's an international kind of a workshop that is tutored by international editors like Claudio and Per, and at the same time also by international producers, also trying to find a way in which to put your film already out there, like on markets, or so trying to find a way in which to progress in the editing of the film, and already thinking about a marketing strategy at the same time.
Yeah, so I was going to be one of the tutors, the editing tutors with Cole. And I was part of the selection committee, so I looked at many projects. And when I saw this one, right away, I liked it a lot, really a lot. So I was not only thinking of already of selecting it, or I wasn't the only one judging it. There were 3 or 4. But already thinking I want to be the tutor of that project. So then we met during the first screening at Doc Incubator, and that's the first time I started to know who was behind this, and
then the scandal started.
Well, that's for later.
That's for later.
Yeah, so I didn't know as an editor how to take this, what to do with this, right? Because as you may know, it's not that simple.
How did you feel about having like a director who's also a main character, or one of the main characters?
Nothing negative about it at all. Nothing special, actually. No, nothing special concerning that. No.
Mm.
I'm thinking if it was the first time, I don't think so.
So
Well,
what was for you like kind of the intriguing thing?
for me, it was definitely, and Tom knows because we talked about it. For me, the scene of Renee talking about the blossom was completely fascinating. It was the thing that made me want to work with this film, to work as a tutor first, and then I ended up editing. But it was really that scene, yeah, because it was, yeah.
But what did sorry, what did you have of the film at that point? Like, I don't know. It's hard to us me to understand.
Yeah.
What parts did you have already at this point?
Well, there was a rough cut that was like 1 hour and a half or something like that. That was
Everything with all the ending.
No, 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 not at all. No.
no, it was mainly scenes put together, some with a lot of editing, some with less editing. Uh, mm, which was the result of a lot of work of Tom, who has been editing, selecting on his own, and then of several weeks of editing with an editor, a Dutch editor.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the difficult, the complicated situation in which I had myself. That I was editing by myself. I edited with that editor, Patrick Minks, which is a Dutch editor, years before, well, 2 years before entering the Doc Incubator workshop. During that time, I was so in the beginning of the whole process. I had shot my first meeting with my grandmother in South Africa. There was some of that her falling in love with me scenes, footage, but there was not really an idea of a film yet. So that editing with that editor got really stuck already years before. So I, at that time, decided, okay, I will stop using money from the production to, be confused together. I'd rather be confused myself, so it doesn't cost anything, and keep on delving and writing and shooting. Yes.
Well, being confused during the editing, we were supposed to only ask questions about the editing, but
Yeah.
I'm really, really curious about when did you get the idea to make a film about this? Is this before you went to film school?
Well, of course, it's very complicated to divide, like you said. I had so many hats on to divide myself in, this is me as a person, this is me as a filmmaker. So me as a person was fascinated by these characters way before I became a filmmaker, just because I was growing up within this family in which there were certain aspects or tensions that weren't talked about. Rene, he'd always, like I say in the film, he'd always been this strange appearance, or this presence somewhere in the dark corner of the family, and at the other corner there was this total diva of a grandmother who wasn't really a grandmother. So that fascination had always been there. Me becoming a filmmaker, I was interested in the opposite of these kind of films. My debut feature length film, which I started during my last year at film school and ended a few years after, was the opposite of a personal documentary. It was like a cinema verite, observational. It was even shot on black and white 16 millimeter with a crew. It was only observing. There was not one question asked. It was there. It in every sense it was the opposite. Also content wise, it was a different subject. Um, that was the kind of filmmaker that I saw myself as being. These kind of, in Holland we have this really awful definition of personal documentaries. They call them ego documentaries. And you know that that definition alone that gets me. But it was, I think, after finishing film school and things developing in the family, my father deciding on quitting his psychology career, and again um, being attracted by his mother, now in the form of writing a biography. I think that motivated me to borrow a camera, this crappy mini DV camera, and just go and film without a film plan. So it was on the contrary of everything that I had learned on the film school. Have a plan, have a cinematic form, have a perspective of storytelling. It was against everything, but I felt the urgency of doing it because I think I felt a kind of an intuitive, emotional um, urgency.
To me, it seems like it's a perfect storm.
Uh-huh.
It's like so. I'm very curious if that was your sort of your idea. Well, maybe not like a subconscious idea
Yeah. Well,
that's why you want to make film.
yeah, it's like the apple doesn't fall far from the tree
Yeah, yeah,
story. I think because I had my father's camera on me since my birth. I'm now, besides the point, I'm now doing the same with my own child. I'm again repeating the whole. So that the mere fact that we were filming ourselves, and not only me, but also my father, his mother, and also even her father in the 1920s and 30s and 40s, as you see in the film, that was something genetically there. And recording ourselves as being is something normal. Maybe it's, you know, philosophically, it's something very important to, in a way, you know, find some founding in our existence. But getting back to meeting Claudio, I had all this material. I knew about the material of my great grandfather. I had gotten it at the same time as my father was going on with this book. I had filmed already the love thing between my grandmother and me. I knew I was going to film Rene because he seemed so evident, but I didn't know what kind of a character and what kind of role in the film he would have. So I assembled everything and things I felt intuitively strong about, and I just put them right after each other in a kind of a linear structure, but it was clearly not as like a story with a beginning and an end. And that's how I entered that doc incubator workshop, not even being convinced that they would select me, because I thought of my film, of all this material, this might be interesting for my family, for me, but who the fuck cares? I still was so conditioned by this film academy idea, or the Dutch film academy idea, that these personal films, well, maybe 1 out of 10 is maybe relevant for an audience. The rest should be going into therapy, but not bother us with this stuff. And that's how I entered the Doc Incubator workshop, having a very low esteem about the material. And I think what happened there, in these first moments in which I had to show it, was uh, especially you, which was great because you don't talk Dutch. We had to also I had to also show raw material that was not subtitled. I subtitled the raw footage, and you asked me to also show material that was not in the footage. And I said to you, yeah, okay, but you don't understand Dutch. And you said, don't worry, just show me some stuff. And we were just talking about it about the exact same thing. Why you have the feeling that babies can look you in the eye and understand you without being able to talk yet. And it was great because you were watching raw footage and telling me stuff about my characters that wasn't expressed verbally, but it was expressed through behavior. And that was to me such, and it sounds so obvious now that we're talking about, but to me that was such a new level of understanding the material and such a new way of looking at it that it opened up a whole new like spectrum of possibilities for editing the film. And at the same time I started to doubt if the way I was working and the editor I was working with was the right choice. And well, maybe we can skip the whole Doc Incubator scandal thing, but that's how we how we got together. It
How
wasn't.
did you attack working together then? What did you do when you finally got rid of the other editor and you started forward?
It wasn't like that.
First, I had to convince Pierre to let me be the tutor because we both wanted. Yeah,
You became the fresh eye. Yeah.
negotiated a little there.
But it was, I think, after the whole decision that I couldn't. Of course, I couldn't. What do you call it? Get a new director for the film, so I had to be there. So the editor had to change. So after that whole thing that happened there, and we were working
Yeah, but
together.
it wasn't in that order. We worked. We talked a lot.
Yeah.
Right, about the film, the project.
Yeah.
We watched rushes.
Yeah.
For a week at
Yeah.
least.
Oh, that was even before we officially started working together. You're right. I have to tell it right. We went to Copenhagen to the studio of Danish documentary. I had worked again with the first editor on a next edit based on the experiences of the first week and of your insights. And I think I had worked for 3 weeks, and then I came to Denmark. You came to here, and we watched the rough cut that was there. And we didn't make one new cut. We decided to only watch the rough cut and talk about it and analyze it. And through analyzing it, sometimes going into the raw material, but in other ways, just talking about it and creating this idea around the whole film and about what the role of the characters were and how they would be able to be positioned in the film.
Yeah, it was more about understanding what was going on and who the characters were, who they were really, what was going on, more than thinking about structure
or solutions,
Yes.
editing solutions. Yeah. So I think that formed the basis for the work that was going to be done later. That only watching and talking and analyzing and not cutting and not thinking straight away about solutions, but really delving into the characters and also into the paradoxes and also into difficult stuff like what I said earlier. You told me at a certain moment during the analyzing of that rough cut that you felt somewhere I wasn't being honest in the film as a character. I wasn't showing my true self. That actually there was a part of me that was very, very angry at my grandmother for everything. That was, you called it symbolically, as if I, as a person, wanted to go to my grandmother, wanted to scalp her and take the hair back to my father, you know, as a way of dealing with it. And that confronted me greatly. Also, the fact that he felt it, and he told me that it was something he felt was underneath it all, but it wasn't, in a way, shown. And it made me really think about. I think for me as a director, the most important and most difficult thing in the film was finding who am I in this film, apart from being the director. Who am I as a character, and do I develop, and how do I develop? And how am I telling this story? And what is the amount of me as a director as to me as a person in every scene, and my role in it, apart from being only the director. So these difficult abstract questions were all raised by that, I think, by that first week. But it also made me decide that I can't what we had discussed during that week, I can't go back to the old editor and expect him to, you know, to elevate together to what we have just created. And I felt I needed to revolutionize. I felt I had to change something in the whole process of the film. So I think after the second week of Doc Incubator, we decided, we made the difficult choice, which was against all policies of Doc Incubator, that the tutor shouldn't be the editor. But I think that founded the basis of the start.
Is it a way that you usually work? Because I think a lot of us, we are so eager to show that we are efficient. So sometimes we try to be more effective than we can actually be. Is it something is this a method, or is it something that just happened? The talking.
The talking. I like to talk a lot at the beginning. I mean, I'm not really a talkative person, but I mean to try to think out loud and to exchange opinions and why this, why that, why the characters do this and why not that, and why at this moment, and all that. I think it's very important. I always start by talking, but we talk all the way because we especially in this project, I think we talked a lot.
Yeah. No, because I think what you also asked at the beginning, and you said, yeah, you weren't in that sense. You didn't see it as a problem or as something that you didn't like. But the complexity, of course, was that next to you in the editing room was not only the director, but was also a protagonist in the film that, of course, tries to see himself from a kind of a distance, but in many times is not able to. So you were also the
Yeah, so yeah, at moments it was a little difficult because it's a very personal story, so you cannot say whatever you're thinking. You have to think, can I say this? Shall I put it in this way, or shall I wait and say it in a month, or right? I mean, we always do that a little with the directors, but in this case more, right? Because it's sensitive. But also sometimes I was finding it difficult to separate the director and the character. So that wasn't that simple for none of us. I mean, for you
Yeah.
obviously,
yeah.
but for me it wasn't that easy either. I was many times I wasn't sure if the things I knew were there or not, for example. Because not only it's something that happens in film making, but the character is there and there, so, and it's not the same. So what he says in the scene, you know, to make the difference from what I know he thinks and what he's saying is not that simple
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
But it's great.
Well, it's there's this one thing we talked about earlier that's now. You said when you watched it the other day, it seems very logical, but for me and for us, in a way, it was the most complex thing, or at least most difficult thing, and it was way at the end of the editing process until we really put it there. That was the part in which my father talks about the orphanage, the children's home, and we make a bridge to the moving of my family to South Africa and the breakup and the divorce, in a way. In a way, I always told you from the beginning, and I had it in my film institute scenario application, everything. It was there. The divorce is part of what motivates Tom as a character and as a filmmaker to go on this journey. but how I didn't really know, and I knew it was, and I think it relates to what you just said. It was this dividance between me as a person, that is, I don't know, probably 50% of you guys, parents, are also divorced. It's a very normal thing these days, sadly enough. So in a way, we're all children of divorced parents, but it makes a huge impact in your life. Well, maybe for some bigger than for the others. But only now, during the making of the film, I also started to realize that, okay, maybe it influenced me more than I thought it influenced me. So it's relevant for me as a person. But is it relevant for me as a character in the film, let alone as the director in the film? And that was a big struggle in my head, because I felt it was a dramatic element that could fuel the character Tom in the film and the director at the same time. But it also had the risk of going into another story again, and there were already too many stories in the film. So I think that was one of the examples that
Yes, because also it's the divorce thing could be a story of the character in the film, or could be something that needs to be really understood deeply to understand, for him to understand as a filmmaker, to make a better film, not necessarily the character experiencing or saying something about it in the film. So for a long time it was this talk about the divorce. It was something that for me was, okay, we have to go deeper there, we have to talk more, we have to understand this thing, because for the character it doesn't seem to be interesting. I mean, to talk a divorce, it's sad for the children. It doesn't feel that interesting, didn't feel that interesting for me. But the fact that I felt clearly that for you it was something that was a wound, that was important. That was so. For a long time there was no divorce in the film until the last weeks, and so in the last weeks he came back with the divorce idea strongly, saying, "I want the divorce in the film." I went to shoot my father and I have this new material. And I was completely against it. I said, no, why no, not the divorce. No, we have 1 week. We have to finish this film because there is the sound mixing, the color correction, ITFA coming. We cannot do this in 1 week. No, please, no more rushes, because there were already, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of hours. And so we fought over it also, because there was something that for me was a problem of addressing what was this divorce about. Was it something like what I had been feeling for months and months, something very personal for the director? Was it something interesting for Tom, the character in the film? Or was it something that was strong for the father character in the film, as this painful memory of the divorce for the father? And then there was another problem, which for me was very important, which was the place of Tom, because the film was going to the father, the center of the film. The risk in my mind, there was a risk that it would be a film about the father. So there were all these things, and we ended up working, instead of 1 week, 3, 4 more weeks
Yeah,
and now the divorce is there.
it's there.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
What did trigger the divorce?
I think it was the we call it in Holland 5 voor 12. The idea that the film, that was the difficulty, the stress factor. The previous edit was selected as the opening film for ITVA. And I felt I didn't feel happy about that edit. I felt, okay, I'm happy that they selected it. It's a great honor, blah, blah, blah. We get everything we want. But I don't want to premiere this film. It's not good enough. So I felt we really had to work on it more than only tweaking and some rhythmic things. And then I don't know, I concluded that it was that element that maybe it was something that was not only for me as a film director, that I thought, okay, the film would function better, but also me as a person telling a story and not wanting to lie, to tell the complete story. And I always felt there was something lacking. There was this little piece in between me and what I was telling. It was delving into the relationship between my grandmother and her sons, or my father. This connection between me and them, that was lacking. And I found that the mere reason that I am the son of the father that has this problem is not enough. It doesn't fuel me enough to be doing this. To also confront my grandmother just, so many years before her death with all this drama and all this, it's not enough. It's also ethically, it's not enough. Owning a camera and feeling you have the right to do this, it's pretty heavy, digging old stuff up. So there needs to be a damn good reason for this Tom to be doing this. There needs to be a pain. And that pain for me is very obviously connected to that divorce that happened in South Africa, close to her, as a consequence of that pattern that between the mother and the son that had happened.
Because it goes through a lot of things in the film. Actually.
Yeah.
It resonates. So did you know that, Claudio, when he came, it has to be in, you knew it actually,
Yes.
already for months?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I knew, you mean that he would come back with this idea?
No, that it would mean a lot for the film.
Yes, but for me, what meant a lot was the connection he's talking about, not necessarily talking about the divorce. Because the divorce for me is easily waking up stereotypes in the audience. You're judging, you're saying, yeah, divorce. My parents' divorce, or the divorce of I know, or not that divorce, or what it meant to the son, Tom, in the film. So I think it was very important that we could pass to the audience in some way the intimate reasons why he is making the film. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it's what we try to do for a long time, not only with the divorce.
Yeah.
So the divorce wasn't for me fundamental by itself.
Can I ask a question about it? Because when the divorce was like in the very last moment put in the film.
Yes.
So the whole build up.
In the very last moment doesn't mean the last day.
No, I understand. I understand. Very, very late in the
Yes.
editing process.
Yeah.
You decided on having the divorce.
But of course there were a lot of consequences by putting it there.
Yeah.
So we had to rework the whole first hour of the film. Sorry, I was
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. But I'm not sure. I think this is interpretation, what you're saying, more than, I mean, even the division of the acts in this kind of film, I don't know, you can always do it, but it's not interesting.
It's floating.
And I don't see any clear link between the divorce and the Second World War, for a start. If you do it, it's your interpretation. So I think it's because the characters were through the Second World War. They are not who they are because of the Second World War. The divorce is not a consequence, or it's not related. But it's an interesting interpretation. I mean, but when we worked on it, we definitely didn't talk about this that you're saying. We of course were dealing with the consequences of everything, but I don't know if I answer your question.
Maybe it's interesting to talk about what is a good documentary film, or what is a good film, or what is a good book. To me, what you do here is you deal with a lot of nuances, a lot of complex stuff, and every scene is not just about what it's about, but it's about so many other layers of relationship and past and things that we understand through information, but also through a lot of other things.
Yes.
And to me, that is cinema. Can you talk about the characters as cinematic characters, or the storytelling as cinema, in terms of keeping this richness of the material, and also the complicated stuff that is in understanding how the richness can create a bigger pattern that feels simple?
Yes, well, in that Second World War sequence, it's when I say, for me, there's no relation, it's not that simple. It's more complex than that. It's because of that also. So there are many reasons. So it's complex enough for us to feel, and there's also this. I get it. I kind of, I feel it. So it's interesting when we can do it, when there's a palette of things, and you get this feeling that you understand in a more complex way.
I think it's also about we were really working so much of our editing time on well, especially the first hour, and then within that first hour, especially the first 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Those were, we really had to tame the beast in that sense. And I think talking also about cinema and cinematic language and character, I think unconsciously or consciously, with every film that we see, and not only our own films, the first, I don't know, not only the prologue, maybe the first 10, 20 minutes, maybe only 10 already. The first 10 minutes, the code of a film is presented, the language in which the story is told, the cinematic language. And of course, what's the language? It's many things. It's the visuals, it's the feeling. It could be a subconscious sublayer, a character, an important character, or more important characters are introduced, and but it's a kind of the code. Without understanding the code or the story already, it's presenting the elements, the palette of colors in which we're going to paint the picture that is going to, stretch out for 2 hours like this film. And I think if we talk about that beginning and creating an urgency and creating a motivation for my character, I think what was very important was that we understand that there are 3 generations, 3 characters that are important in this film.
It's a grandmother, it's a father, and it's a grandson. And already in the prologue, you have a sense of that. You don't really know who's who. There's this ocean, the first shot, an ocean with thunder. It doesn't look very pretty. It looks a bit aggressive. There's a phone call. There's mommy, 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 and that's all. It's in a way, it's all metaphors. It's not yet clear what we should know. Who's telling this? But it's creating a kind of a feeling. And I think when we go a little bit further and we see my grandmother, we have seen the archival material in between. We know, okay, there's this kind of a past that's part of it. But especially when we meet my grandmother in the here and now as a character, in the first outside, her asking me this morning kiss, I didn't really understand her, and it's funny, but it's a bit weird. And then inside, she's preparing for this trip, and I go on about dealing with stuff that she doesn't want to talk about, and she constantly tells me, "Please don't dig deeper. Don't dig deeper." But I, naive that I am at that point and persistent, I tell her no, but I think it's all about appearances and I want to get to the truth. What truth? There's no truth, and if you want to find it, you won't find it. And to me, that point and what goes exactly after it was extremely important in creating this feeling for urgency and for character. There's this character that doesn't want to cooperate. There's two characters, the guy behind the camera, who is a family member. There's a grandmother. They want two exactly opposite things. She wants to live a pretty life, wants to keep things under the carpet, and there's this stupid, naive grandson talking about truths that wants to dig deeper. So there's a tension, a possible conflict. But what we did was immediately after, and it was out of a necessity because there wasn't image of the last part of her talking about the truth, you won't find it. It was off screen because the camera stopped and the sound kept on rolling. And so we needed an image. And the image that we chose was this black and white 16 millimeter image of the train track and mist. And intuitively, we thought, yeah, this could be right. And then trying to analyze it, we found, yes, but it's totally right because what she's creating is mist. She doesn't want us to get too close. We call it, in Holland, we say, she trekt een mistgordijn op. It's a mist curtain between the truth and what she's showing. But it's inviting us in because we want, like children, if you say you can't go there, you want to go there. So it's creating a motor. And what we're also doing with that is creating a sense of an area of the story that we will develop. We will get there eventually. We don't know why we're seeing black and white train tracks. It has no meaning. But it has a kind of a subtle promise in it that we will maybe eventually go there. And I think what happens, I hope it happens with the audience, when we go again to that train track and it seems that it's the footage made by her own father, with whom she had a traumatic relationship as a child, it lands. And I think that's how we worked many times. It's and what you call about complexity and character is not over explaining a character and behavior, but creating sometimes even creating ambiguity and mystery, because that's what my grandmother was. She was very paradoxical. She could be sweet, she could be aggressive.
Yes, and at the same time in that scene, your grandmother is strong because she's passionate, she's bloody.
Mm.
She's not saying, no, what truth? There's no truth. No, she's it's like this. Yeah. So you are interested in this
But I remember
character,
a quote
right?
that you had I've seen different cuts of this film. And I remember a certain cut where you had the same opening with the sea, but then we go to your grandmother. We get to know that she's 95, and we go to see her doing these exercises
Yeah,
that you now see later in the film.
yeah,
And that was, it's an interesting thing. But then you go into this, she's that old and she's still looking that good, and that's like totally a different film.
yeah,
So all of these
yeah,
small details.
yeah,
I mean, that was very funny.
yeah,
That was very TV-like in a way.
yeah.
That the
Maybe
sensational thing.
more inviting on a ha ha ha, you know, funny, a little bit tragic comedy way. But to me that felt very much like delaying the real urgency. I felt many times, even way beyond the ITFA deadline, that still I had this fear, like, okay, we're telling a multi-layered, complex family story here, but people should understand quite soon why I am out there doing this. It should feel a kind of an urgency. You shouldn't be waiting for half an hour before you start to feel, oh, okay, so there are things going on in the family. Okay, might become fascinating. So I needed that kind of a rawness, a kind of aggression, and that's also what we talked about. You see the archival sequence really in the beginning of the film, in the prologue. You see me as a baby, you see my mother dancing with me, you see the perfect little family, and then you see the 8mm image of my grandmother. And in my voiceover, I say, and this is this all changed when grandma came into our lives. So it's in a way subtly saying she destroyed everything. And when Claudio proposed to do that, I was like, "Fuck, but that's aggressive, man. I can't get it out of my mouth." And then we tried it, and I was like, "Wow, this is effective, and this is exactly what it needs, and it will become nuance later. But we can't start with nuance right too soon, because you would be distracted." So by combining all these more raw, aggressive elements and the conflict. I felt, and then of course the what we talked about, the divorce. I felt, okay, now we have fueled the character and the filmmaker enough to be able to, go into more complexity and nuancing. And what you refer to. The thing with the Second World War and the door opening to her past, I never wanted to make a film to take vengeance to my grandmother. Maybe as a person I felt that emotion, like Claudio confronted me with, but as a filmmaker I felt I had this ambition of not going into that trap of killing my grandmother with this film. That would also be too easy. So I wanted to create a film in which, even though that she has failed as a mother, she had put her sons in a children's home. She falls in love with her own grandson. She admits it, and she doesn't want to change it. She doesn't accept him. She doesn't accept her the lover of the girlfriend of the filmmaker, even of her grandson. Even though all those elements are there, you still understand her and you still feel for her. So what I wanted to create was the feeling in the beginning that you totally understand and sympathize with all the victims. My father, and then you feel for my father, and then when you think, okay, she is, well, disturbed my father, then we present Renee, and oh my God, now we go, what the fuck is this? And then the diary of my father, in which he literally says she's destroying him as a person, and then we see him, and when we see a destroyed person, like my grandmother's image is totally down there. So I wanted to go full in that, not nuance it, only to the moment in which, and even in the boat, when I ask her in the interview, so what about the children's home? Children's home? What's the problem? She doesn't understand how could a person be traumatized by being in a children's. Even not understanding that is like. So when you, as an audience, like me, before making the film, when you think you know it all and you're able to judge her objectively, she's an evil bitch, only then we open the door to this other dimension. And then you become uncomfortable with your judging. I really wanted to create a paradox, ambiguity in that sense. And that's also why we made the choices we did during the end of the film. It felt too much as an Hollywood ending, so we needed to disrupt it again, to create the feeling of this is real, this is ambiguous, this is not. There's no good, bad. There's no black and white, victim, perpetrator. Sorry, it's family. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I'm so expanding.
And let's talk a little bit about Marianne as a cinematic character, and also the way of handling her love affair with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to say something about what you said about the scene of her in the gym, because it goes a little bit in this double fascination, because they're both fascinated by each other in different ways. In that scene of the gym, the problem, and it's about the difference between the director and the character. The problem is that the character is not there. I mean, he's there because he's filming, but he's not active in the scene. There's no presence apart from looking, but in a very neutral way. So what we had a little um, difference of approach with that scene, because you were, like you were when you were filming, fascinated with the character of your grandmother.
Yeah.
Like you are, you're making a film about your grandmother and you were fascinated by her. I wasn't at all, because I wasn't you, the filmmaker.
Yeah.
And I couldn't be sure about the attitude of Tom, the character in that scene, about his fascination. So it was always been a scene that had much more power for you than for me.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wasn't easy to find the right place for it,
Yeah.
or to the right length, or the
Yeah.
or the meaning of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And you were asking about the fascination of the grandmother for him.
Or your handling of the fact that you have a sensational and also very controversial thing happening in the film, like a grandmother's
Falling in
falling in
love,
love with her
or
grandchild. I mean, you could. How
I'm not sure it's falling in love. It's more desiring, which is a little of controlling, a little of lust. It's a mix of several things. I don't think it's love.
No.
Well, there was this very strange thing, because it's unusual in a film to have that. So there were people that were fascinated with that idea, that were repeating this thing of, you should go there, this is the thing.
It's a unique selling point.
Yes. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was a thing that if you present it, it takes up so much attention that it will never be the same afterwards. So if, like for instance, in that first rough cut for the entering of Doc Incubator, I put it immediately at the start of the film almost. As you're thinking still from the fear that it wouldn't be the normal film about layered film, complex film about a family, in a way, wasn't interesting enough. No, I need to put this in the beginning so you will have enough fascination to be able to see a complex film about a family. And I think that was really good about being forced to show it to other people, because even marketing people like Freddie and Sigrid, who are really into selling ideas and really good into marketing, told me, no, but the film is not really about that. It's about a complex, nuanced story about family, and this is this love desire thing is a manifestation of a mechanism that you want to talk about, but it's a manifestation. It's not the core. And understanding that and or reminding me about this was great. And you were always the one that reminded me about it. Okay, it's not the most important thing. It shouldn't be taking over the film. It shouldn't be a film about what. So what is this desire? What is it? What is this love? A quest for, and I think that was in the editing sometimes difficult, because when we would put it there, it would it's in a way
Taints
it taints
too
everything.
strongly.
Yeah. And when it comes back, of course, in the breakup scene at the end with the family portrait, of course it's different because we know much more. But of course, probably all of us immediately think back at that love desire thing. So it was till the end difficult in balancing it with the rest, I think.
Yes, and it was a very dangerous thing. But it was one of my other battles, let's say, in a good way, was not to forget that you were also attracted by her.
Mm.
You know that she's right when she says, "But you don't feel me like anyone else. You don't act with me like with anyone else. You say it, but you don't do it.
Uh-huh.
There must be a reason." She's in some way right,
Uh-huh.
not the way she thinks is right, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and that was a little difficult to balance it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because in a way, talking about it now, it's still strange that, and that's maybe the part of the film that I still feel is underdeveloped, is that it, if you talk about narrative, it doesn't have it doesn't have a lot of consequences. The event, it has the consequence. The the candle scene with the wine, in which he expresses the desire for the first time, leads up to the scene in which I go into a kind of a counter a confrontation, in which I say, yes, but your family stopped calling me grandmother. Yes, but you are my grandmother. Yes, but I don't. It's not romantic and it's too real. That scene, you could see that as a consequence to to her first expression. Then you see this gloomy night, and then you hear the tape recording of the session she has with a fortune teller, and not only talking about love, also about having sex or going to bed with me. So in a way, that moves into the extreme of her expression of her desire. But after that, we go to the boat, and maybe in the hairdresser scene, in which she shows you that, okay, this is you and me together, on the boat. That could still be like connected to the desire, but on the boat the desire is totally gone. It doesn't come back at all. It's nowhere. It's we don't talk about it. She doesn't talk about it, and I don't know. I don't think it's a huge problem, but I can and I would understand if people would be uncomfortable with but where's that love element? And it coming back at the end in the family portrait as being very late. But at the same time, it could be a motivation why it's good, because it takes up so much concentration. But that's still an element in which I was, or we were struggling with. What's the position? What's the role of that desire?
Yeah, I just felt like saying that you say that it's not there on the cruise,
Yeah,
but it's just on set. But to me, it's still there.
it's still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also with her phone call,
Yeah.
when she says how wonderful it is that she's there with you.
Oh yeah.
She doesn't say that you're on a love trip together, but there's something that
Maybe in her.
makes you feel that maybe she's thinking that, but she's not like explicitly
Yeah.
saying it. So
Yeah.
I think it is out there.
Uh huh.
Yeah, because it's the way she is, right? So it must be there in some way.
Yeah.
Like when she tells you in the ship, after talking about the when she got pregnant. Well, all the Second World War thing, and she got pregnant, and all the things we didn't know yet, and you didn't know
No.
until then. And she says, I never told you that. It's the first time, right?
Yeah.
There is also there,
A kind of
you know, we're close now.
Yeah.
You know me better.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm telling you intimate things
Yeah.
like I don't tell to other people.
Yeah.
It's because she's like that.
Yeah.
I feel the same in front of the door to Renee.
Yeah.
When they have this kind of discussion like a married couple.
Yeah.
That's very intimate.
Yeah.
So I think it is there through the film.
Yeah. It's just more subtle than. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's great to hear.
But basically, the whole affair thing is also, to me, a way to say, to describe the deeper story of the tragedy that she's
Yeah.
just a very egoistic woman in a way, and she's lost in a youth that has gone, but her way of playing that woman that she was is not gone.
Yeah.
And also that kind of the tragedy of her not being able to have other people close to her unless she does this to them
Yeah.
that she's done to your father. And
Yeah.
I mean, that is for me a very like the bigger universal thing that we can take with us from the film as well.
Yeah.
Very connected to this sensational thing, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not only about her wanting to have sex with you. It's
No.
not really the interesting thing.
No. 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 No.
It
No.
is the pattern
Yeah.
or the psychological
Yeah.
devastating thing that
Yeah.
we see.
Don't you think the pattern starts with her father?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it probably starts before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They just died. We don't know.
But it's
Mhm.
true that she can be attracted to her grandson because she has problem in defining clearly the roles of the family members. So all things are related. So when
Yeah.
you talk about something, you're talking also about
Yeah.
why she acts like a girl or
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
she wants to go to bed with her grandson.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't have that much time left, but I just think maybe we should touch upon your previous work, Claudio, because I think there's just to because there's so many layers in this film. There's so many doors that open and closes, and I think you did a film called Stranded many years ago that also
Yes.
has a similar construction in a way. Can you talk a bit about? Is that something you're good at? This kind of multi-layer,
That I don't know, but
or it just happened to?
I, you know, like this thing of the train that we don't understand. What is this image of the train archive misty thing there. In Stranded, there are lots of things like that too. It's something I like, that you don't understand, but you feel something. You don't get out, far from the film you're watching. You're just following, like music. You don't have to understand everything, and things then later relate, come back in different ways. I like that a lot, yes. And in Stranded, there are many layers, so strange if you analyze it. Why suddenly there is a boy coming into the room, we don't know who he is.
Stranded is a film about a plane that crashes in the
In
mountains.
in the Andes, and there were 45 people in the plane, mainly young people, young 20-year-olds.
It's a documentary.
It's a documentary.
It's also made as fiction.
Yes, with reenactment. And so from these 45, there were 13 survivors, and they thought they had died. They searched for 10 days, and then they thought they were dead. And 3 months later, they appear again. So they survived at 5,000 meters in winter for 3 months because they were eating the bodies of the dead people to survive, and because of many other factors. I mean, like it was so cold that there was less infections and something we don't understand, and that's part of the reason why there are these other layers, because it's something that it's hard to understand. How can you still survive, still want to live, still go through some limits, social limits, whatever? There are many questions raised in the film. And I was going somewhere with my talk.
There was a little boy, you said.
Yeah, well, so there are some shots here and there that you cannot justify. There is this thing about you have to go on, advance in the story. Why this? One of the the good things in our work was that we didn't have any commission editors. We did have some Dutch, but they were
Dutch.
not that tough, like they sometimes are.
No
They-
deadlines, no real interference from them. No.
So we could have also time because we worked for how many weeks we said
I think
27.
27.
So we could do the wrong things and then think again and correct and say, no, but that wasn't working. Let's try again, and then you can do things that don't have a clear reason. I mean, that you cannot justify easily. Everything has a reason, right? But sometimes you understand more or less, or you can formulate why, or you can justify in some artificial way, or like the acts, or um, but it's good to try them and to follow this. Yeah, why not this? Why not that? And then sometimes you end up finding it awful, and sometimes you end up understanding why you do it, why you did it, because of course the train, the father, but we weren't thinking about the father when we put the train.
No, that's a strange thing. it is narrative. Now we can say, yes, of course, it's the father. Where doesn't she want to go? What is this truth that she doesn't want to address? It's the story that is only there expressed, and it's related to the father. So the film material, the black and white with the mist shot by the father, indirectly has a lot of meaning, but it's only later.
Yes, and the train, you could say the
Yeah, the
train is
train
the
is like
life
yeah,
and the
yeah,
past and the
yeah,
archive. It means
yeah,
cha cha blah blah. You could
yeah.
talk a lot,
Yes, I
but
could talk a lot.
no, I mean anyone could find the good reasons to
Yeah,
justify
yeah,
in a battle against the commission editor.
yeah, yeah,
But actually, in the working process,
yeah.
it doesn't happen like that.
No,
Or
no. Well, I think it happened after a while. After if when we try to build upon it, because after that shot, we put the shot of the the little framed picture of my grandmother as a young child, as the sad girl.
yes,
And I think that was because we began to understand why the train shot was working.
of course,
Yeah,
and because we had tried, there was a shot of
yeah,
you
yeah,
writing.
yeah,
There was the little girl that was in 25 different places
yeah, yeah,
before,
yeah,
and so things start
yeah,
um, to find the meaning. But
yeah, yeah.
well, you've been through that process too. So,
Yeah.
but yes, I love that.
Can I ask Eva? You've seen several cuts. Were you there also in the last in the final process?
No, I think I came to 1 month before you closed. I saw the
Yeah,
last, and that was supposed to be very close to final,
yeah,
but you kept on working. So,
yeah,
but it's not that different. But the divorce 1 month before you had to screen the film, actually,
yeah,
the divorce was not in, and that was our last discussion.
yeah,
How can you integrate? Should you integrate? Would it be
yeah,
like a big bomb in the middle of the film? And it seemed bigger than, I mean, it was very difficult, but now it feels very integrated without taking over.
yeah,
But maybe we should end up on just the truth, the question of the truth in this film
yeah,
that is discussed, like almost in the first scene or the first scene after the prologue, and
yeah,
then somewhere in the middle, and then when you leave
yeah,
and go to the airport.
yeah, yeah.
What did you learn?
It's super complex, of course, and but in a way, the epilogue in which she says she's actually continuing what she's saying in the beginning. It's the same reel. It's just the end of the same. When the camera stopped and the sound. So that's the arch in a way in the whole film. And she's saying something about the truth, but she's also saying something very essential. That she starts with. So after doing this film for years and years, this family affair, she says, I think you will find out that you found out nothing. And of course, I found out something, but it's meant symbolically. You found out nothing that you know, um, and then that you will understand that you have to. I'm not telling it in my own words. That you have to leave the family as it is and start living your own life on your own conditions. That's what she's saying. I think that's for the character Tom and the filmmaker at that moment in the film. It's very important to end this shit. um, and then it's only the last little thing combined with the thunder that she is saying, and truth, what's true. And that's of course making the reference to the beginning, my whole intention of finding the truth. And I think that's to me conveys the complexity of the reality, that everything is juxtaposing each other, and a paradox. It's ambiguous. There's a truth, and within the truth there's another truth, and and it's raising more questions than answers. And I think that's very close to reality as I experience it. We as humans, we try to, like editors, like directors, we try to organize reality, to structure things, to invent language, to invent rules. But actually the reality is chaos. It's chaos everywhere. Life is chaos. Nature is chaos. And I think that's as close as it gets to my own life philosophy. And that's also why, like I said earlier, the choices were made to disrupt the idea of control or idea of narrative in a way. That when we get back from South Africa after she has met Renee and she's in the kitchen and she's telling me, oh, at least even if I die, you carry me and I carry you till forever. You know, it's like it's a feeling of, okay, now the story closes and we're, you know, it's in harmony in a way. It's sad, but it's in harmony. And that felt too much as a fiction. It felt as a perfect ending, almost like, okay, now we have the credit.
Yeah.
And I felt that was lying. We needed to disrupt that. And then I felt, you know, we discussed it a lot. We tested it, and we weren't sure, but the family portrait was in a way necessary there. And that was way before my grandma started dying. Because I don't know, you are all editors, so you know we all compress time in films, so I don't have to explain that to you. But there is always 1 out of 50 people in the audience that ask me, so you think that your fight over the portrait caused her to die? Because it's, you know, there's no time in between in the edit.
Yeah, we were having fun about that.
Yes.
We were saying, yeah,
And there
you
are people
killed her,
who
man.
killed her.
But
And
you
then,
did. But you decided to edit it like this, so you
yes.
did kill him. That's with the picture.
Well, if you, well, yeah, is that Eisenstein?
But so you did bring the head back to your father.
Maybe. Yes, yeah, in a way. No, but the really the good viewer would see that in the image when my father arrives, when she's already at home, on her wall is the family portrait, and that reveals that there's a lot of time elapsed in between. But it's so subtle. Sorry?
That's very that's a nerded.
Nobody saw it.
That's
No.
No, some people see it.
There's always one or
Yeah.
two in every audience that saw it. Yeah. And then I have to convey that, okay, film is lying. And there is a year in between the fight over the family portrait and her in the ambulance going to the hospital. My father's a psychologist. And I think, well, I when he would be here, he did a lot of Q&As together with me, and you would ask him that, he would say, yes, well, I think it's a good film, and it didn't really surprise me at all. So it didn't reveal any new things to me about my mother, and it didn't really change my idea about her. And of course, that's him being the psychologist that has total control over the story, and that's how I know him. I don't know him the way you see him in the film, crying. I never see him cry. So again, that was a result of heavy interviewing, using the camera as a weapon to get, in there. So there is this part of him, of course, that's very sensitive and still not in control. I think, like you said earlier, with the big storm, my father became psychologist because of a good reason. And it's not only a theory, he will totally admit it. He will say it's the same. He wanted to cure his mother and his brother, or at least understand them. And of course, get control over himself, yeah. Yeah, I wrote his diary, and maybe it's typical for a 17, 18-year-old, but it really struck me that apart from the things that you see that I had in the film, he was from one day to the other he was trying out ways of being. He said, "Today I'm going to be this and this person. I'm going to be the da 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 da," and he would reflect on it. It didn't really work out. I wasn't really that funny, and yeah. So he's been doing that for all his life, I think, finding out who he could be in relation to other people, and of course, the impression of René is that it's an autistic person, or at least a person with a kind of a mental, not so much disability, but he doesn't relate to people in the common way. So he's been struggling more expressively than my father. My father is so-called normal, has a normal life, a normal family, a normal job, and René is like the, yeah.
I think it. Are there any more questions? Because
Just
up
one.
here.
I was just wondering about the script that you read, your grandmother's book. Was there any truth in that? Or was it a lot of diva?
Well, that's interesting. This Fiona figure, the blonde British diva, she fictionalized a lot of it to be able to sell it. And she had, there was a lot of fiction and there was just a fraction of facts. And the facts that were in the book, most of them I already knew. So it wasn't a revelation. It was a romanticized, like, novel about this female hero that survived, and a fashion queen and several men. And,
But the book is called Double Life.
yeah.
What's the second life?
The second life is her, like her. She's the diva and she's the sensitive person that's hiding part of her personality. So there was a kind of the intention was a psychological kind of a novel with the two sides, the butterfly and the person behind the mask. But so my hopes were pretty high up that this would reveal something, but it wasn't. No, it was no. It wasn't the book that my father would have wanted to write himself. Yeah, yeah. And she never read it herself, like she says in the film.
Okay, I think we should say thank you to
Yeah.
the two of you for
Yeah,
sharing.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eva.